Hey, welcome everybody to Business Over Beer podcast. I'm your host, Ben Surratt. This is the Midwest edition, and my guest today is the one and only Will Deppiesse. He's a father, he's a banker, but more importantly, he's my brother-in-law. Welcome, Will.
Thanks, bud. Happy to be here, man.
And for people watching, listening, if you hear like music in the background, children running around, pots banging, arguments starting. It's the day before Thanksgiving, so we have a house full of family. So just be aware if you hear that. Anyways, thanks for being here, bro.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, man, this is going to be awesome. I wanted to get you on for a while now, and now that I'm in Wisconsin, perfect opportunity to do that. So high level, Will, who is Will Deppiesse? Just high level of who are you?
Commercial banker for Nicolet Bank. Have been in commercial banking about 25 years. Father of 4 children, married, and a taxi service in the evenings, running kids to and from practices and whatever other activities they have going on. So
I feel that.
Involved quite a bit in the community as well. So got a lot of side hustles, I guess, that are or volunteer or supporting others. So
yeah, dude. Well, we'll get into all that. Before we do, though, this is the Biz Over Beer podcast. I already opened my beer, but you did bring me a beer, and you brought me from Fifth Ward Brewing. This is the Absolutely Agro, and it's a freaking West Coast Double IPA at a mild 7.5%. It's gonna be a great Thanksgiving.
good way to get the holidays.
Yeah.
Started, right?
What are you drinking?
I have a from a Shiner brewery mixer pack, Shiner Cosmos. It's a reserve, so almost tastes like a hint of like a bourbon barrel.
Really?
It's got like the smooth finish like one. So but a gentle 5%.
Maybe in the middle of the podcast we do a pause and I have to grab one of those after this one. So, Will, what does a commercial banker do? I've been in banking for a while, a little bit, and when I was a banker, I was more, I guess, retail. So, what's the difference between retail and commercial banking?
I would say retail is what most people see in the bank. So most people, when you start as a kid interacting with the bank, with your parents, go in. I'm old enough, it goes back to like the passbook savings books for savings accounts, when they hand wrote in what your balance was. If anyone can imagine that's listening.
I remember those, the passbook.
Yeah, exactly. So on the retail side, it is typically your tellers who are interacting with you, kind of your deposits and withdrawals. The personal bankers who are opening accounts for you, maybe credit cards, CDs, money markets, that sort of thing. And then, if you happen to own residence, lender, together that crew takes up the retail side of the bank. And then on the commercial, we're meeting with business owners. Now we also want them to be consumers with us as well. So especially where I work at Nicolet, it's very important that, on the personal side that you're banking with us. Mm-hmm. But the focus is calling on businesses, nonprofits that have lending needs, cash management needs, treasury needs to help them with their deposits and help them with their lending needs, make sure that their debt gets structured to match with what their needs are for the business. You don't want something that's a 3-year payment when it's going to take them 5 years to pay it back. You want it to kind of match in line with some cushion so that they have some excess cash to be able to reinvest in the business.
Yeah. This is kind of high level question, but has banking changed since you started, and I guess more focused in has commercial banking changed since you started?
There was way more paper when I started 25 years ago. Tax returns would get mailed to us. The personal financial statement listing the owner's, assets and liabilities that would get sent to us. Almost nothing came, digitally. Now, probably 98% of financial statements I receive come to me, via email or secured portals, via secure email to make sure that nothing's getting hacked, getting it to me or, from them. So, that's probably the biggest
Technology.
yeah, the change in the technology in which the information, gets to us. Underwriting doesn't really change a whole lot because at the end of the day, can you pay for it? Either with historical performance of the company
Yeah.
and layering in maybe the additional projections for, a project that you're doing. If you're a machine shop and you're buying a couple of pieces of equipment because you have the opportunity at some new business, well, what's the additional cash flow you're going to create from that, along with what the company has generated historically to be able to pay for existing debt plus proposed debt.
Got it. So a lot of our people are listening, and all our viewers are small business owners. So when it comes to getting a loan for small business owners, what should be a priority for them when it comes to financials? Like what is a priority, or if you had a top 5 or whatever, what would be a priority for a small business owner?
So, I have a couple startups I've recently funded here in the last couple of weeks, and one, they don't have maybe a financial background, so for their training. So to me, what I see people struggle with sometimes is if you're the idea person or you're a salesperson, you need to understand your margins. You don't also have to learn QuickBooks and be try to be a CPA. You can hire that service, especially if your time is most valuable either finding the new product to sell or developing, or selling or managing the business, operations so that you get product out timely to be able to sell to your clients.
Yeah.
So, they give you an order and you're having 100% delivery time on time.
Yeah.
And managing your costs.
Yeah.
So I think understanding costs, figuring out where your time is best spent to create the most impact for your business, and then either hire or contract those other services instead of trying to, if you try to do it all yourself,
Man.
You have these things that you either aren't trained to do,
Yep.
hate doing, like something I'll see like in the construction trades is we'll get people who are great at doing the work, and then they need to go do the billing and are behind on the billing because they battle with, I got all this work but I have to pump out all the invoices, and don't like doing QuickBooks or don't like doing the billing part
Or don't know how. Like they don't know how to do it.
Yeah, it's like, it's not like I can't do electrical, I can't do plumbing, I need to hire that stuff in my own house, so figure out what you do well, focus on those things, and surround yourself in some way, whether it's advisors or staff, depending upon the size of the business and what it can afford for the parts that you need that you're not trained for.
Yeah.
And focus on the part that you do best that brings the most value to the business.
I love that. I mean, because I've been preaching that to our business owners and our solopreneurs for sure. I mean, you feel like you have to wear all the hats, and we try to tell them like it's impossible to wear all the hats.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
You got to get a team together, and a banker is one of them. A banker, having a good banker on your side that you can utilize and they can kind of navigate you through is part of your power team that we talk about all the time.
That, the accountant, the attorney,
all of it, bro. What makes a good commercial banker?
I think you need to have some experience, to have seen some of the economic cycles, so, I mean, we've had, aside from the COVID effect, post
Yeah.
08, 09 financial
Yep.
crisis, there haven't been many quarters where the economy has been soft in like 15 years. So you got a lot of younger owners in that time, and it's only kind of gone one way, which is
Sure.
up. And, you know, uh, 6 months after I started in banking, we had the dot-com bubble burst. And then,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
and
That's
then,
right.
and then 6 months after that, 9/11 happened,
Yeah.
or a year and a half after I saw 9/11, and
That's
then
right.
the financial crisis and a few other explosions in there. So having a little extra gray hair, you see some of
Oh,
those
dude.
things.
Oh, yeah.
So some of it is just understanding the business well enough. If whatever your business is, I don't have to need to understand all the ins and outs, but I need to understand well enough what you're trying to accomplish and looking out far enough so I can structure whatever debt you're asking of me
Mm.
appropriately. And then if there's things that you need on the deposit side, make sure we have the right protection to protect against fraud. We're seeing an enormous amount of mail fraud, plus, having the fraud tools in place, positive pay to protect yourself so you don't do a bunch of work for free because someone steals your money.
Yeah. Do you work with, all parts of the bank? Like, do you work with the retail side really or not? Do you?
Yeah, because like in our world, we are heavily focused on um, it being a relationship. We are less focused on just doing a transaction here and there.
Mm-hmm.
We want to understand your full financial picture because one, we can give you better advice if we understand that.
Sure. Yep.
And then it matters to us to bank more parts of your total relationship. So interacting with our retail team, I mean, a lot of my clients see our tellers more than they see me.
Sure.
Because if they have some part of a cash part of their business or choose to deposit by bringing checks into the office, they're interacting with the tellers a couple times a week, maybe.
Yeah.
Whereas they don't need to talk to me 3 times a week. You know, but if they're going to buy a cottage, what's the right way to do that? Are they going to rent it? Should we have that in an LLC? Or do they have a high net worth? And we absolutely should have it in an LLC instead of them owning it personally.
Yeah.
In case someone slips and falls or something like that from a liability perspective. So a lot of it is just kind of talking through understanding what they're trying to accomplish, and then us do the part to make a couple recommendations on here's why we think it should be set up this way. And then interacting with the other parts of the bank, I mean, we're kind of the focal point that way in terms of getting people connected, to different people on the team
Yeah.
to help with the needs that they have.
Yeah. Is there a certain point or I guess it depends on the business, but is there a recommendation of when a small business ought to start applying for loans or lines, or is it kind of vary per business? Like, is there a time frame, or is there a trigger, like something like, ooh, this might be a reason for you to get a line?
So if you're going to be having some growth, I think you need to understand what are your cash needs going to be for that. So a lot of times when someone tells me they're picking up some new business, if they are an active user of their line of credit, then it's okay, do we need to bump it? And some of that is driven by what are the payment terms you're going to get paid from the person you're selling to. So if that's 30 days, well, you're not going to convert everything in 30 days. So you need to buy whatever raw material, so if you're a machine shop, you got to go buy all this metal. You got to pay your staff to take that metal, convert it to parts, and then you have to ship them. And then once they receive, the clock will start ticking on the 30 days. So you've probably ordered the material way before that to then take it, make it into whatever the part is that you're selling, and then paying your staff the whole time until you
Yeah.
get paid.
Yep.
Kind of managing the cash flow plus whatever other known expenses. So I have a tool I'll give some folks that need to kind of get their arms around that. It's simple in Excel, but it's like a weekly moving cash flow where you can just look at, okay, here's when I expect to get paid. Here's what all my known expenses are. Here's how much cash I'm going to have left over each week.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of keep putting that in to figure out, okay, do I need to borrow? Am I able to self-fund it?
Yeah.
And a lot of it's dependent upon the terms, because if you're dealing with big companies, a lot of times they want to stretch you out. And I've seen large companies going, kind of jamming down longer terms to their clients for probably the last 2 years or so. It's like they just have access to more information. The big national firms that are publicly traded, they got economists either on staff or on retainer, kind of see what trajectory the economy's going. And when they start hoarding cash, I start to get concerned a little bit for what direction the economy is going to go.
Interesting.
So when they start cranking down on terms and push them out to 60, 90, I've seen some 120, 150 days.
Wow.
It really matters on your pricing to be able to pay for that, because then you're paying me to borrow on your line of credit. So you got a financing cost plus all your other costs to produce the product.
Wow.
So especially for young small businesses, that's some of where the dialogue goes on, hey, I just won this big project and I'm selling stuff into Walmart. Well, figure out what time frame they're going to pay you over.
That's a good point.
In terms of how much cash is it going to consume?
Yeah.
So that's kind of for folks that are already in business. If you're going down the path of
just starting out.
Yeah. So, or you're thinking about doing something, what I recommend to people, if I get to them early enough while they're still employed, get a home equity line of credit.
Really?
Because it's a line of credit that you have access to. There's no monitoring by the bank. Most financial institutions will put a home equity line of credit in place for like 10 years.
No, yeah.
If I'm putting a line of credit in place for you on the commercial side, it renews every year. You need to give me financial statements before I'm going to renew it to make sure that, something hasn't changed in the business, which is going to change what my pricing is potentially. On the personal side, that's just not how it's done. So it's like, if at the time of application you demonstrate you have the equity and the business or the personal income, it's just done for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go into business or contemplating it while you're still a W-2 employee, working for someone else, get the home equity line and have access to it that you can tap, and you don't have the same kind of monitoring.
Sure.
And later, if you don't end up going into business, or you never need it, you can always close it out. But, it's just a different deal having to apply when you need the money or in a pinch, because it never moves as fast as you want. And you're not in a good spot to negotiate, so, I'd rather it be where we can have more fair pricing for both of us because, you've thought of it early enough. It's easy to underwrite, and get you into a good spot to have more than enough cushion for what you need.
Sure. I know that a lot of our small business owners, our solopreneurs are, they're newer, but they have that mentality of still having, there's a transition that every business owner has to go through. And that is if they've been a W-2 employee for a long time. And they're now starting to get into being the employer. There's a transition, and it's strange because they make a lot of mistakes. They can make a lot of mistakes that I've seen. What are some mistakes that you have seen newer business do, or mistakes that a lot of mistakes that business owners make?
So I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier on what are you trained for? And I think sometimes bankers give someone who's looking to start up a business, because their financial statement may be pretty solid, we give them too much credit that they know how to run a business. If they've been inside of a large company, that's just a different animal than it's all your money,
Exactly.
because I mean, you're making different decisions,
Exactly.
and also, again, it comes down to what are you trained for. So if you're a sales guy or gal and you know how to sell product, but have you truly managed people, or have you been kind of a lone wolf that's been successful because you had a superior product, or there was something unique about your situation where you could go sell really well, but trying to manage everything else to be able to get stuff sent out. So I think sometimes bankers have blinders on. If they look good financially, we look at it sometimes too often of we know we can get repaid,
Yeah.
as opposed to all those other things that matter in running the business in terms of leading people that are on your team, and how are you going to get everything out the door when you can't control all of it. you know so a lot of those sorts of things are what break down, where you can give me a great business plan, but kind of the execution of it and finding the people
Oh,
around
dude.
you to
Yeah.
make it happen.
I really want to hit that. I mean, it seems redundant that we're talking about it twice, but I mean, like, do what you're good at and focus on what you're good at, and get the other stuff, get a team together to handle that for you, because it saves you so much headache. It really, really does. Been there, done that. Like, I'm glad you keep, like, I'm glad you said that, because it's true. Like, you need to do that. You need to hire the stuff out that you're not good at or not strong at, I guess.
Well, like an example, like a lot of my startups that I'll work with, unless they're a trained finance person and we're working in, doing payroll and some of those things, figuring out how to pay payroll taxes and all those sorts of things, I normally just recommend them start with your accounting firm. So you get everything set up in your accounting system correctly. You get all those procedures and everything in place, right? And then you can hire someone in to kind of pick it up and run with it,
Sure.
as opposed to putting someone in or putting in your spouse who's not trained to try to save some money, and then all of a sudden we find out a year and a half later you haven't paid payroll taxes and you got a lien,
Sure.
from the state, and now we got to deal with that, and all of a sudden it's the bank's problem to try to
dude.
figure it out,
Yeah.
and some of that is, do bankers always ask all those questions? Probably not.
Yeah.
Do entrepreneurs sometimes think they can kind of take care of all of it? Absolutely. And again, it kind of comes down to what are you going to do best that's going to create the most value for your business? Do that. Either hire people on the team or hire professionals in a contracted way to
Yeah.
do those things that you don't do well.
Yeah.
And, do that, and you're going to get off to a better start that way.
For sure. You're kind of touching on it right now, but my other question was like, what does a strong banker client relationship look like? Or do you have a story, a personal story of one that is kind of like the example of what a good banker client relationship look like?
I had a client that I suppose you would say was construction adjacent in terms of what their business was. I helped him with a line of credit for like a couple $100,000. Over time, he grew the business. Eventually, I moved financial institutions. I didn't retain them, but stayed in touch with them, still good friends with them. And that person over time grew the business to, well into 10 figures, eventually sold
Oh,
the
geez.
company, and we have a bunch of services with that client, so at some point in time, that person's not going to sit idle and just go disappear on an island somewhere. He's going
Yeah.
to do something else
Oh, yeah.
again,
Yep.
So I think, a lot of startups, it is, what are you trying to do? Is it a lifestyle business where you're trying to create a job for you and your family, as opposed to something that you're really trying to scale?
Sure.
There's kind of two different paths there. Both are fine, but what direction are you going to go, and what is realistically achievable? And then in the bank world, we are always looking for clients that we have a lot of penetration of services to, because if you have your personal stuff with us, you have your wealth stuff with us, the financing, if you have a retirement plan, all those things. I mean, honestly, we're making a little bit of money in each of those things, but it also shows a commitment that, you believe in what advice we bring and what we're, bringing to the table. So those are the ones that we're most excited.
Sure.
Ones that it's here, finance this one piece of real estate. I'm not going to do anything else with you. Maybe I'll let you have that one deposit account for
Sure.
that one piece of real estate. Banks are probably, some will talk themselves into that they can generate a relationship over time, and sometimes that works, sometimes you need to do that to earn your way. But
I was going to say that's a good way for businesses to kind of foster that, that trust, or that, like, hey, I'm using only you, and you are my financial institution. Like, you are it.
yeah, but then I think, for the entrepreneur, it is absolutely fine to expect great advice and attention for making that commitment.
Yeah.
On the other side of the table, or the other side of the desk, I normally say, it's not just one-sided.
Yeah.
It has to work both ways for it to be good for
It's
both.
got to be a good partnership.
Yeah,
For sure.
And if your relationship, whether it's with people you're buying product from, financial services, accounting service, any of the services, if it's not really a partnership and it's one way, you just need someone to change direction on how the organization goes, and it becomes a problem for your business.
Sure.
So you need to have relationships.
Yeah, 100%. Another question I had for you is, if 2020 taught us anything, I mean, it's a lot of things it taught us, but there was a big spike in entrepreneurs and small business and solopreneurs. Have you seen a business trend? Like, have you seen, like, just as a commercial banker, like, businesses pop up, like, just a certain
Like industry?
yeah,
or-
industry? Like, have you seen a big boom in certain industries?
Yeah, you always have a lot of people coming and going from real estate, investment real estate, because, I think a lot of people, you'll hear the comment, well, they own their own business, so they must be really wealthy. Well,
Right.
yeah, there's,
Yeah.
there's a lot of work that goes into it, and there's,
Oh, yeah.
there's plenty of people that aren't wealthy, because
Correct.
if everyone could do it, everyone
Everybody
would do
would-
that
yeah,
instead of working
exactly.
for, other people, Although, that being said, the people I work with that are the most wealthy, own their own deal.
Yeah.
They own equity, not working for someone
Sure.
else.
Yeah.
But that being said, I've never owned something on the side. I've always worked for a bank,
Right.
Or always worked for someone. So on the trend side, I've probably seen the most on real estate, and then
Really?
I think people, well, and I'm based in Oshkosh, so you get the third largest university in the state.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of student
yeah.
housing.
Yeah.
So it's
For people who don't know, it's kind of over here-ish.
other side of the lake. So it's a little bit different real estate market than some communities that don't have a especially a public university
Sure.
in it. They're so it's propped up a little bit that way. But then people realize tenants can be a pain in the butt.
Oh, yeah, man.
And
Yeah.
what's the condition of the property, and its work. The people that do the best in that do a bunch of the work early on. They self-perform some of the work, whether it's all the leasing
Yeah.
or they're doing all the care for the property. Sometimes it's all of it, until they get to kind of a breaking point where you can't do it all and you need to hire someone. But by then you've accumulated enough properties under management
Sure.
or ownership. So.
Yeah.
But there probably hasn't been a specific
Like,
other industry I've seen,
trend.
Yeah,
I-
what we did see, like probably about a year and a half ago, or about a year ago, there was, you saw a couple banks fail that were pretty sizable in the country, and a lot of the liquidity that had been in the banking system, so the deposits, started going elsewhere, and we have seen clients start to use their lines of credit more this year than we saw the last couple of years.
Interesting.
And that, I think, was coming out of COVID. There was so much PPP money
Right.
and things like that, that there was a lot of money in the system. And I think a lot of that has since been digested. And especially when inflation got pretty high, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So we have seen more consumption of that cash, and people looking to, tap their lines more. And also related to the inflation part and just what the labor situation looks like in the country, with baby boomers still retiring faster than people are entering the workforce.
That was my next thing. Yep.
The amount of automation we're seeing people do and how much the cost of automation has come down in the last 10 years. I mean, if you looked at a robot for in your factory, what you can get the capability for compared to what it was 10 years ago, and the cost is unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm glad you brought up the baby boomers because, like, I bet I've seen in the past 2020 for sure. Like, so post-COVID, a spike in small businesses not really selling, but like just closing. And like I have seen probably more people more businesses not really selling their businesses, but
just shutting the doors and closing
shop.
Assets.
Is that lack of just not understanding how to create and make your business sellable, or do you think that's just I'm done with it, I don't want the hassle of selling it, and I just want it to be done?
I think there's a couple things. So it's incredibly important to prep the business to be viewed the way a buyer is going to look at it, to get the price that you have in your head. And too often, I think sellers think the business is worth the number that they need to retire versus what the business is actually worth.
Correct.
And when I'm looking at a business, I'm typically looking at what level of debt can it carry.
Interesting.
In terms of the value, because
interesting.
If it spins off $500,000 a year of cash flow, when you kind of do all the add backs of, say, excess owner comp, maybe they got 6 vehicles, that are all for family members, things like that. But you kind of look at the number. Well, it's probably not going to sell for $10 million because that would be like a multiple of 20.
Right.
So I think you need to be planning that out 5-7 years out.
Dude.
And what I will tell people is, if you've had a really good run where earnings are going like this, which is going to be a good number, it's kind of like kind of like the Aaron Rodgers situation where, we were crabby that he left, but looking at how he has played since he left, we're probably fortunate that he left a year early instead of a year too late.
Yeah.
It's probably better to sell your business a year too early than a year too late. Like, all of a sudden we have a soft economy and it screws up the multiple if you get a bad number in there in terms of what's the number you're going to earn when you sell the business. So it's really important to have clean financials, get some of the personal stuff out of the business so that you have what the true cash flow of the business is. If you're trying to drive up the number, it really helps to drive sales and have a trend the right way.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll see people continue to beat down what the tax liability is. So in acceptable ways, but ways that...
No, I get it.
But, if you're not paying any tax, you're probably not going to get some giant number to sell the business.
Right.
Both can't be true. So, I mean... And we see it a lot in cash-related businesses, bars, restaurants, where they run it for a long time. It appears that they have a better lifestyle than the financial numbers would tell me, and then all of a sudden they want to get paid this number that doesn't seem to make sense with what I've seen on paper.
Yeah.
The paper kind of has to match with the number that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I guess start paying yourself, because that's another thing. Like, a lot of small business owners don't pay themselves. They just, put it back into business, or like you got to pay yourself too. Like you got to show that not only the business makes money, but I can provide for myself as well.
Yeah. So when I see a small business and it shows they made 50 grand, I'm like, and there's very little wage in there,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so are you paying yourself out of the wage, or are you paying yourself out of the net income, and then you're taking a draw out of that? Because then I have to deduct that out to show what the actual cash flow
Right.
is, especially if you have some personal debt. So if you have personal obligations, you have to take that wage in some way, shape, or form. If it's a draw, distribution, whatever the method is based on the business
See,
type.
you know who you are. You know who you are.
But I mean, yeah, it's important, and you need to figure out how to grow the business.
Sure. Yeah. You seem to like what you do, bro. What is the most, or one of the most rewarding things about working with small businesses or just business in general?
I love helping businesses get from where they are when I meet with them to where they want to get to. And whatever my part is. I mean, a lot of the companies I'll call on, they're not sitting there waiting for me to call and bring loan documents over to, a lot of times, their loan stuff is not something that is a dire need at that time. But there's something going on in their business that they need help with. I've been around a long time. I know a ton of people. So normally I'm able to connect them to someone that can help with an issue that they have.
Yeah.
And over time, you do that for someone often enough, they're probably going to become a business opportunity to work together. So,
Sure.
Helping people achieve what they want to achieve with whatever part, I can assist with.
Yeah.
Certainly loving to be a client, but, a lot of times that's not, where they're at. I mean, in our world, a lot of loans get written for 3 to 5 years. So if I miss you by 4 weeks and you just renewed and your bank has a prepayment penalty, I may not have an opportunity to do something with you for 5 more years.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
timing really matters, when I get in front of someone and to be able to have an opportunity. So,
Yeah.
So to me, it's you just stay in front of people and, provide value. And value isn't always asking for something that you can do for me.
Yep.
You know,
Absolutely. Yep. I try to that's the other question I was going to ask you is you're really big into giving back to the community or being part of the community, networking you're big at. And, it took my Angie and I a long time to realize that the community is the one who is going to help you succeed. And they're the ones that you need to really, really be in front of. Why, for you seem to have a really big community presence. Did you get that, just from being part of the bank? Or was that something that you've learned over time and you realize, wow, the community around me, Oshkosh community, is really just backing me, so I have to be able to give back?
been in it long enough. I don't remember which came first, but I think some of it is, early on, I'm not from Oshkosh, so I moved there. So some of it early on was just get involved to get to know people,
Yeah.
because you can't do the day job without getting to know people. And then if you focus on helping people, people see that, that sincerity versus, if it's clear that you're doing it just to try to create the next sale for yourself and not trying to help others, I just think that's, people are going to sniff that out.
100%.
So I think it's important to be authentic and, helpful. And then, so early on for me specifically, I got involved with a lot of nonprofits, served time on either committees or on boards. One helped get to know people, but most often it was, there was some connection to someone on that board that led me to be involved for a period of time. And then over time, I think early in your career, it's important to do that just to network, get to know people. And then over time, you become more selective because the time, you can only get so much time, right?
You have a family and you have other obligations.
Yeah.
But even like the whole tiny home thing that you did, bro, that took a lot of your time.
A little bit. Yeah.
I mean, and like, if you want, I mean, don't feel obligated, but if you want to talk about that, I really admired what you did for the people in Oshkosh.
Yeah. So I'm involved in Oshkosh Kids Foundation, and we were formed to help families and kids with immediate needs in the community. And we formed like right before COVID, so like 6 months before COVID. And then we started seeing all these homeless families that became more visible to us during that time because there was a moratorium on evictions. So for a while, we were helping families with hotel stays to just get them sheltered. But, at the same time, they weren't making a lot of progress to becoming self-sustaining. So over time, we just looked at, it's hard to fundraise to continue to just give money to rough hotels, motels in town without a lot of positive outcomes, other than having the families and the children sheltered and making sure kids were going to school. So we developed a concept to have supportive services on site, and we now have built a 32-unit tiny house village in Oshkosh for homeless families.
Incredible.
I think we only have like 2 empty units at
That's
this point.
incredible, bro.
So, ton of work. Difficult construction period for when we did it. So, cost of construction was higher than expected.
Yeah.
Kind of all the things. A lot of fundraising time spent on that. Still trying to fine tune operations there, but that has, so where I was kind of talking about, you get involved early to get involved and meet people. And that organization is one that has become a big passion of mine.
Yeah.
Which early on I was getting involved in nonprofits, for other reasons, wanted to give back to whatever I could to those organizations. But, obviously this is a different level of passion to, help house families we've had families move to us that were living in cars or tents in winter. So
that is absolutely incredible. I love that. Dude, awesome. Well, it's been about 40 minutes.
Should probably help with making Thanksgiving
Yeah, we should probably
dinner.
help. But thank you so much for being on here, bro.
Thanks for the invite.
Plug yourself. Where can people find you? If you can, just plug yourself.
Yep. Will Deppiesse. I'm on LinkedIn, Deppiesse at Nicolet Bank. Commercial banker there in the Oshkosh office. Find me on LinkedIn. Would love to connect, and anything I can do to help. Love talking about business, and like I said, a lot of times it's not about necessarily what I specifically at the bank can do to help. It's more connecting people to other people that can help, and sometimes it's on the bank side. And just love chatting with people and talking about business and helping people grow.
Cool, bro. You are awesome. I love
Thanks,
you, man. So glad you're my brother-in-law.
Thanks,
People, like, for real, like, this dude is not just my brother-in-law, he's my friend. And he's a best friend. He really is. He's like just one of, I tell Angie all the time, you have to love your in-laws, but you don't have to like your in-laws. And I love and like this guy. He's awesome. So anyways, thank you so much. We'll see you all next time.
Bye-bye.
Oh, that audio is going to be freaking fun.
Good luck cleaning that up, right?
The damn water heater.